Welcome to another edition of the morning briefing here on NoFilter.net. I'm Jeff DeForest. That is Mike Lubitz. And am I dry? That's the question here. We originate from South Florida for the folks that are unfamiliar with us, and been in South Florida for a long period of time, broadcasting here on a variety of stations. I think I was everywhere on a dial. In fact, when the great Howard David, who at one time was he was a tremendous play-by-play announcer. Howard David, what a voice this guy had. Just heard from him the other day. He was asking how I was doing. I got in touch with
Nice.
him on social media, but he was famous for alluding to the fact that they're going left to right on the radio dial, which is pretty common. And we often question that. I mean, it's a little suspicious because, as we say, what side of the stadium are you on? How do I know that I'm not hearing the game in Hebrew, that you're actually going from right to left because you're on the opposite side of the stadium that I perceive you to be on, and I've got the whole game backwards the entire time I'm in the car? It was just one of those things. But if you went from left to right on a radio dial during my tenure in South Florida, you would probably have me at every stop, Lubie, except the one that gives you the advice, which I don't even know if you can get this station on any AM radio. It's usually like somewhere around 1620 on the dial. And the only reason you are even aware that it exists is because as you're getting off the exit to go to any airport, it says, for airport information, tune into
Yep.
1620. And there's DeForest. Well, you know what? What a game last night. That was really something. Did you see those Celtics? Derek White in the fourth quarter? He was on fire. So, we've gone from left to right on the radio dial many, many times. But, it would have been prohibitive to listen to anything while you were driving yesterday in
Mm.
South Florida because we have had 2 days of the most torrential rain. If you're not a believer in climate change and global warming, some really screwy stuff going on here. I mean, you had a hurricane in Palm Springs, California, in the desert. Fucking Lawrence of Arabia, the turban blows right off of his head there, and he's having to back up his camel and see if he can't retrieve it as it's blowing miles away in a driving rainstorm in the middle of the Sahara. What are we talking about, Louis? This was crazy. How did you survive this?
Especially out here out west, it rained. We haven't had rain for a couple months. And that, I guess when you go from summer to winter time, that sort of happens. But the last 2 days, it literally rained nonstop. Like I literally almost lost my dog yesterday because I kept walking him in the rain. And I was like, okay, I guess let's go walk again. And I opened the door before I put the leash on and he freaking bolted. So I'm literally running without shoes in the middle of my damn complex trying to find my freaking dog. Because I just got sick of the rain. Like it rained for 2 straight days. Like finally this morning it subsided. Like I don't know what happens around the country, but it's weird when we get that down here.
Unusual and unusual at this time of the year. That being said, it reminded me a lot of watching. I was driving home from my accountant's office, and he's about a 20-minute drive away. It took me about an hour and a half to navigate my way through that. And it's not as if you need a Magellan, but you could have used a boat. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me, though, of Wide World of Sports, because it literally it was like a demolition derby out there, which was one of my favorite events. And it struck me because I was a big fan of the Wide World of Sports. This was my television viewing as a kid, Libby. I would watch the Pro Bowlers Tour. Very exciting. I mean, you're talking about wall to wall, just unadulterated and unbridled excitement. As here's Jack Biondolillo. Yeah, he's the guy in the check pants. And, he balls, a shot. He rolls the ball down the alley there, gets a 7. And then they had Nelson Burton Jr. was maybe the greatest color analyst of all time in any sport because he could be a color analyst on bowling. There wasn't that much to say. Well, look at that, the 2, 4, 5. Tell you what he's got to do. He's got to kind of fit that ball in between the 2 and the 5, and then the 4 is going to get taken out. You watch this. They would have telestrators and all kinds of stuff, and then Chris Schenkel will go, oh, here he goes, stepping to the line. And that was, what we had as entertainment on TV. I mean, now you have 700 college football games on a Saturday on channels that you never even heard of before. But back then, this was the staple of our diet. So you'd watch the Pro Bowlers Tour, and it would roll right into ba 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 ba. Trying to, get the full spectrum of sports here. Jim McKay was there with the shaky microphone. And, I don't know when he developed the shakes, but I mean, he was a great guy. He seemed to be a great American. Sorry, didn't mean to impugn the integrity and nor the physicality of the great Jim McKay. But when you get the shakes, I don't know. It's a sign that maybe, the curtain is about to close, my friend. Not just on your career, but on the entire trip that we're going through. So, and it would have him doing like demolition derby. We were convinced that Roone Arledge, over the years, we became convinced that Roone Arledge was a sadomasochist of the most extreme variety. because and it was an early runner. I don't know. Was he also? He couldn't have been alive when the X Games
No.
had its origination because they were also determined to get somebody killed, and I think they eventually did. Since when is it a good idea to drive a snowmobile off a cliff and try to do a bunch of spins
Oh, jeez.
as you land in some big giant hole that's 400 feet below? They did get a guy killed. I mean, they had those things with the skateboards, and the guys were splattering themselves all over the place. They looked like Dwayne Wade in his rookie season, these skateboard
Yes.
guys, when they go up and down that thing. But the demolition derby, I mean, the object of the whole event was to destroy every other car that was on the track at the West Islip Speedway until there was only one left. And that car had like the fender was on the ground, it was dented in every spot. I mean, it looked like some can that you found crushed on the railroad tracks as you were walking by, and said, "Wow, look at that, man! How many trains ran over that thing?" Yeah, it was kind of like that outside. It was very, very rough from a driving standpoint, and it did remind me that I'm not sure how safe it was to dive off the Acapulco cliffs. Are you? Do you ever think that you would attempt that? This was
No
a
way.
big thing.
No
And it would
way.
have some guy, well, here's Pablo Aviles from Mexico. I tell you what, he's done this 1,000 times, Joe. And he really knows how to time the tide. And then some poor American schmuck would get up there. And if it wasn't Greg Louganis, you had a pretty good chance that you were going to see something devastatingly and catastrophically bad happen to this guy. How did they do that? That was really the gist of TV. It was a thrill-seeking thing to see if you couldn't get somebody killed while they were on camera. And today, what would be great about that? They should bring back Wide World of Sports and this whole Death Wish thing, because today there would be action on it,
Oh yeah, you bet.
right? Hey, look at that. They had a three-element parlay here. That A, he would get less than 7 on a dive, and B, he would check out at the end of it.
Oh jeez.
That had to be like a giant proposition. Speaking of which, I love a good betting scandal. I don't know about you, Lubie, but there's a thing circulating today that happened on FanDuel yesterday, and I was alerted to it by a friend of mine who had posted a picture of the most unusual wagering patterns that we've seen since Ivan Lubicic was serving in the first set against the number 172 guy in the world and double faulted on the first point. And then we found out there was heavy Russian money. Did this arouse any suspicions? But money had been pouring in from Russia for 2 weeks prior that the first point of the game would be accomplished by a double fault by Lubicic. Now, I don't know that they ever held him accountable for that. I think some kind of vagary occurred where he never really was under any kind of scrutiny outside of the investigation itself, and he might have been absolved of all blame. So I might owe Ivan Lubicic an apology. Lubicic surfaced again as like a reasonably talented coach. He might have even been, was he working with the Joker for a while? Ivan Lubicic. Check this guy out. Ivan might not even be his first name, but I'm I don't mean to lead you astray as we look up our facts on the show. But very strange betting patterns. I was always a big fan of this. There was a guy in California who was known, and nobody knew the actual person, but his persona was known as the Phantom Plunger. And this guy used to show up at the track, and you would look at the show pools, which were usually pretty tepid and always the lowest. That there wasn't a ton of exotic betting on horse racing back then. This was at Santa Anita.
It's saying
And
he has coached Raonic and Federer.
Federer, yeah, okay.
He
I
was
know I'd seen
Federer.
him somewhere. Does
He
it
was
mention anything about the betting scandal in that Wikipedia thing that you're looking at?
No.
Because yeah, he somehow strangely double faulted to open up a match. I don't know exactly what the circumstances were, but they were suspicions aroused as the entire country of Russia had money on Lubicic to lose, and somehow he managed to lose. Which we don't want to cast any aspersions his way, because the investigation, as many of these things tend to be, unless you're investigating Jim Harbaugh, turn out to be inconclusive. Are we overwhelmingly defending Jim Harbaugh for some reason, or just aghast at the fact that it's so arbitrary and selective who these people target, and what organizations get targeted for these type of sanctions and punishments? When you would have to think, if the Big Ten commissioner was even slightly awake, he would realize that every team in the conference is probably doing the exact same thing. You don't think Greg Schiano's doing that at Rutgers? You don't think that Ryan Day is doing that at Ohio State? You don't think this Franklin guy is probably trying to steal? No, he probably wouldn't. He would be the one honest guy, because he's content to lose to all of the top 10 teams. I'm 1-15 for a reason. These other guys are cheating. Maybe there's one piece of evidence. Sometimes a negative piece of evidence can be the one thing that actually is the catalyst for getting you off the hook. I don't know that Lubitsch ever got off the hook, but this was one of the strangest things I've ever seen. And it happened on FanDuel, and I'm not sure that it isn't an indication that something bizarre is going on, some kind of wild conspiracy. I don't know. Maybe it's money laundering. So I see a post from a friend of mine, the great Sheldon Glass, out of Las Vegas. He's always at the South Point Casino, and he makes bets that vicariously I live through, where he's plunging down. You see some of these tickets, right?
50 grand,
22,000 to win 20,000 on the Ravens, whatever. And you're thinking, who has 20 grand to bet on these games? Are we just out of touch with what's really going on, Lubie? I mean, you put $10 on a game and you're a nervous wreck.
Yes.
You're schwitzing more than you were, sweating more than you were when you said I do at your last wedding. It was hot out. Were you trying not to sweat? That was my one big fear, that I was going to have like a big streak of schwitz, like I was Rudy Giuliani coming down my side as I was saying, well, I guess, the level of sincerity of my wedding vows was somewhat in question when I wrote them on the back of a golf futures page as we got married in Vegas. And I said, oh, shit, I'm getting married here in 10 minutes and I'm still betting horses. And so I picked up whatever I could in terms of paper to write something down. And it was on, I still recall, it was on the back of the odds to win the British Open, I think. No, it was the Masters. Not to win the Masters, because this was February, right after the Super Bowl. In was that 2015, Lubie? San Francisco, 2015 Super Bowl, XXV113, whatever.
I think 2015.
Wow, a long time ago. All right, so I see on social media from this guy Sheldon G on Las Vegas. He's posted a picture and says, "Does anything look unusual to you here?" And tying it back into the Phantom Plunger, just to give you a little perspective on how these things usually work. You would have win, place, and show money demonstrated how much money was in the total pool. I'd like to show you what kind of denominations you're playing into. I mean, if there's an enormous pool, people flock to bet some of these exotic wagers, especially what is it? Is it horizontal when it goes this way or vertical? Horizontal, right?
Horizon.
Vertical is up and down.
Horizon. I just think horizon.
I never got that right. So you never lived through this era where your TV would go on the fritz and you didn't have to, call some place in Guam to get on, the phone with some woman in a boiler room in the Philippines to try and correct it. Okay, now unplug, go upstairs and unplug the lamp. Now hold that cord. Do people still have to go through that kind of
it happened to me a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Bizarre, gymnastics to get the TV going?
Yeah.
Back in the day, though, I mean, it either went on the fritz and you called the repairman, or you had a horizontal and vertical adjustment. And so the thing would start flipping. So vertical is up and down. Horizontal is going across the board. All right. So, with this, fascination, and it's great. I mean, you can make a big score without betting a lot of money on these so-called horizontal wagers in horse racing, where you bet the winners of a sequence of races, 3 races, 4 races. Used to be daily double was a big thing, and they only had one. Now, it's rolling all the time. Doubles, triples, pick 3s, pick 4s, pick 5s. So it would be appropriate to pay attention to how much money was wagered in those pools. But not necessarily in this case, where the Phantom Plunger would come. He put 50,000 a show, and it would show up right away. And the whole track, there was a buzz around. Wow, he's here. I can't believe it. He dumped 50,000 on some 2 to 5 shot to hit the board in a 5-horse race. And for the return that you would get, it would seem like a very unwise maneuver, did it not? Mm-hmm. This same guy, Sheldon G, had a bet, and this was crazy, insane. He had bet, what was it, 20 grand or something like that, to win 3,000 on Tyson Fury to beat that Nagano guy, that MMA guy that nearly knocked him out. And then he had to wait in desperation with like 20 grand on the line. He was going to pick up a measly 3 as the ring announcer says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a split." And you just want to split your head open at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Fortunately, he got lucky there and they gave it to Fury. But, it was 50 grand to win 3,000.
Oh, Jesus. Are you kidding me?
So he's aware of stuff like this. And sure enough, at the Meadows, a harness track of no great distinction. In other words, it's a shithole somewhere outside of Pittsburgh, the Meadows. You see the pool denominations that have been wagered after the race is over. Win pool has like 5 grand in it. Place pool has 3,000. Show pool has 2,000. Exacta pool maybe 12,000. Trifecta pool 6,000. Superfecta pool 1.5 million. Something strange popping up there, you think? I think so. This was on FanDuel. There's an immediate investigation. I guess they did make the payouts. But what would you say? I mean, it would be a disaster in many ways if all of the favorites came in, because then there's a likelihood that the other people that participated in that pool, you have 1.5 million in, and maybe there's another 3,000 total in there. But what are you trying to do? Sweep the whole pool, or are you just trying to disguise the fact that you're selling fentanyl at the Mexican border? What would be the reason to have some kind of odd betting activity like that? This was more bizarre than the Russian money that was on Lubitsch back in the day. Who would figure too that the dirtiest sport now? I always thought, well, not in terms of betting, but when you're looking at cycling, clearly the dirtiest sport in the history of anything that's been on the sporting landscape. Witness Lance Armstrong, but he was just one of a zillion. If you weren't blood doping, you couldn't even ride a bike in the days of the Tour de France. And why is it never seen on TV anymore, Lubie? Because nobody cheats. Are you even aware when it's run at this point? It used to be like the biggest thing. Okay, and we're watching 27 days of Lance Armstrong riding up a mountain. Who was chasing him? Was it Sheryl Crow?
They were together. Yeah.
Sheryl Crow. Yeah. She's running up the Alps or the Pyrenees, and Lance is on a bicycle, and he dumps her right after the race. Unbelievable. What a cold-hearted son of a bitch that guy turned out to be. But they'll get to the bottom of it, but it always appeals to me. I don't know what went on yesterday on FanDuel, but it was absolutely insane. And this happened at several racetracks where there was total out of proportion amount of money wagered in superfecta and high five pools. If anybody knows the answer to that, please phone in to the show here, even though we don't have a call-in number. But we're very curious to see what the end result of that is going to be, because there is nothing, Lubie, like a great betting scandal. Ravens and the Bengals tonight. Who do you like? Final thing. Ravens, Bengals. 2 weeks ago, if they hadn't played those games that they did last week, you would have said, wow, what an unbelievable, must-see, compelling matchup. Does it still loom as such in your eyes? Ravens at home, favored by 3 and a hook over the Bengals.
Yeah, Ravens. Why not? They have a really good defense, and you presume Lamar Jackson will figure it out. I'll go Ravens. They
coughed up 40 points in the second half to the one-armed man, Deshaun Watson, who had a bone broken in his shoulder as he rallied the Browns to a very improbable win and left the Browns as contenders now. And they have to go, what's the guy? He has like 3 names, the UCLA quarterback.
Dorian Thompson Robinson.
Can he be a good pro? What do you think? I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, he's interesting.
How far behind Caleb Williams is he as a talent? No, really. I mean, when he was playing at UCLA, obviously there were comparisons there. What do you think?
He's not Williams. I mean, he's fine. He's a fine quarterback. He showed signs in preseason, but he's not. Or when he was hurt, but he's not. All right. Caleb Williams is insane.
We'll get to the bottom of it. So you're going with the chalk. Very good, Louis.
Yes, I'm going chalky.
Yes. You may as well just start gargling with milk of magnesium, and the chalk really prevents. I would tend to agree with you. So that shows you what kind of a putz I am, because we were the people who gave you the Jaguars -3 against San Francisco last week as our best bet of our lifetime. When you lose the game of your life, you probably should never give out another selection again. So Ravens -3.5. Mike Lubie Lubitz. Hold them accountable, people, as we see you tomorrow on the next edition of the Morning Briefing on NoFilter.net.